In a world that's powered by violence on the streets where the violent have power, a new generation carries on an old tradition. In a world filled with violence, their only weapon is the truth. Hey everybody, welcome to the Fanatics of Film, and my name is Ben. Thank you so much for joining me. So the Brightburn just had a digital release, and I wanted to just give my 2 cents on it. I watched it again for the second time, and it's definitely still kind of in its vein, but I just wanted to give my 2 cents on it and kind of talk about this. If this does well financially, then I think that it would be incredible to think about the probabilities of the future for this Brightburn universe. Here we are in the midst of a reimagination of the superhero universes that we grew up with, springing into motion, perhaps generating a strong cult following, with Amazon's The Boys having a strong release and with lots of positive feedback. We can only hope that the future of this new franchise continues to grow. I hope they do. It's kind of cool to see this alternate version of things. Now, to my bizarre speculations, so far James Gunn has brought us Super, starring Rainn Wilson and Ellen Page, and we have this new Brightburn universe. If this really takes off, there are tons of new possibilities. This is why, because Sony owns Spiderman. So far, I am sure that they extended the contract with Disney Marvel Studios. Of course, they probably did, especially with Venom being involved. However, if they didn't, then it is possible to bring these two together. I don't know, that might not work actually. It just might. I much prefer now that I've said that out loud. I'm not a fan of this personally. If Spider-Man was just exists in New York by himself, fighting all the many villains that are staples in the Spider-Man universe, then I think I could eventually they could eventually end up in something that was really has traction and success. And I want Spider-Man to be successful, but I prefer Spider-Man in his own universe. I don't like him. Don't get me wrong. Like, it's cool. It was cool having him in the Avengers, but that was enough for me. I prefer having Spider-Man in his own universe, fighting his own villains. Kind of like Batman. Batman's great by himself because he has so many interesting villains as well as Spider-Man. So Spider-Man is kind of like the Batman of Marvel in that sense, to that degree, where the villains are a lot. All the villains tend to be is interesting and give it enough spice as they go along. As we enter into the opening of this film, we learn about the mother and son relationship, and she plays a whistling come find me game with each other. The funny part is that the whistling is the exact same interval as the Negan warning whistle. If you watch Walking Dead, you'll know what I'm talking about. Brandon Breyer is introduced as having superior intellect, while all of his peers tend to be simple-minded. As he is made fun of in class for being as such, the girl in question, Caitlin, I believe her name is, reassures him not to worry. Smart guys end up ruling the planet. So this was bizarre foreshadowing. Later that evening, as Brandon is slowly lured out of bed and with red glowing eyes, we learn that there is something evil afoot. The simplicity of the story is truly why I feel that it carries weight. Brandon is found by his mother speaking in evil tongues sounding satanic. He is in a trance trying to break into the chamber where his craft is. There is a true dark and light fighting each other inside of Brandon here. Been raised from birth by two really good parents, but he is plagued by this evil force that seems to be a parasitic being determined to take control of him. So as a result, whatever civilization that sent him to Earth was not anticipating the possibility of positive influences that would interfere with the evil Superman agenda. While celebrating Brandon's birthday, Noah McNichol, who was in Breaking Bad, he loses his temper in the creepy supernatural way, slamming the table, and all the power of the TVs go out just before the hunting trip, just after they told him that he couldn't have a gun. They find photos under Brandon's mattress, and his father authorizes the urges to him thinking that the urges that Brandon exhibits are harmless, saying good talk. So there's this kind of shrugging off that happens a lot in this. Later that night, Brandon shows up in Caitlin's room, Emmy Hunter, scaring her by playing Send Her to Me. This is a common trope often used in the Scorsese films as well as the X-Files episodes, making happy love songs and seem sinister and terrifying merely because of their accompanying a horrifying experience. We are now introduced to a 12-year-old serial killer. This guy is really good at being scary. Jackson Dunn is really convincing as this devilish kid torn in two by his own bipolar extraterrestrial biology. As we see his parents trying to tackle his bizarre behavior, they continuously laugh it off. They are both drunk on their own farts, drowning in their own self-delusions. Finally, the father realizes that he probably ate all the chickens, so he starts to kind of see things. Brandon breaks Caitlin's hand while she is forced to try to help him after she had seen him in her room. Pretty traumatic. So instead of this girl being kind of this person who you can confide in, it's just really kind of crazy. I have a feeling that if they have a sequel, that she might show up and be kind of this, kind of the one that he tries to confide in but just can't. The fear really starts to settle in after we learn that he is completely invulnerable or perhaps invincible, and Kyle Breyer, David Denman, is considering possible contingencies because he is completely fearful of his own son and what his capabilities are. As Brandon discovers his true origin, his mother, Tori Breyer, reveals how she has prayed for a baby for so long, the possibility of having a baby, and that he had been the answer to those prayers. This scene was executed poorly. However, it appears that they could have reshot this. He loses his temper again, poorly executed, and runs off thinking that he was lied to. And then of course he realized, he's finally translating this seance that's intruding in himself. Finally interpreting it as take the world. When Brandon travels, he affects electrical appliances. This is kind of an interesting different type of power. As he pleads with Caitlin, proclaiming his future effect on the planet, I can't help but be reminded of when she was first introduced, saying the smart guys rule the planet. When her mom is pulling the glass from her eye, I am reminded of how graphic Super was. So this is in the same universe. If you saw Super, it was very graphic and, very, very unapologetic of that type of thing. And, James Gunn is a producer on this. He's not a director or anything, but his cousins are the directors. Brandon shows up to threaten his own aunt. When she refuses to back down, he unleashes his evil smile. The smile that he lets out is sinister and devilish. This dude is evil, is the devil. This dude is the devil, sent from hell. When Noah McNichol gets home from hanging out with Brandon's father, he is blindsided by the power of this guy. I don't know why he decides to take off in the Suburban after being thrown back 15 feet into the garage door. That part was a little weak, perhaps leading him away from his wife. I don't know. Perhaps. I don't know. I guess one of Brandon's unique powers is that he has a kind of a built-in EMP. That's what's going on there. He's basically got a built-in EMP. So right after Brandon drops the Suburban from 100 feet in the air, Noah is killed slowly as he can't even keep his own jaw on, which was rather freaky. It was very odd how he's trying to keep his jaw on, and Brandon is obsessed with the symbol, so he keeps scribbling everywhere. The BB. It appears every time that he kills someone, he has to leave this signature or his calling card. Perhaps it is part of the ritual that he must perform every time he claims a victim. He is an interstellar serial killer. This is pretty horrific stuff. The dream sequence is reminiscent of a supernatural horror movie, not unlike Nightmare on Elm Street. It definitely reminded me of that, how surreal it was and how just kind of out of the box it was, and how unexpected it was. And Noah sees his wife embracing infant Brandon with blood all over, just exuding, blood just oozing everywhere. Her white eyes bleeding out, blood escaping on the edges. Very graphic, very comic book-esque. That was a very comic book moment there. As the police officer who has been investigating the recent murders in this small town, he discovers the calling card, the symbol of the double diamond, the 2 diamonds, the BB, the Brightburn, or the Brandon Briar. Brightburn, Brandon Briar. Say that 4 times. Brightburn, Brandon Briar. Brightburn, Brandon Briar. Brightburn, Brandon Briar. Brightburn, Brandon Briar. They go hunting a second time. What? I went hunting when I was 12, but at least they gave me a BB gun. So that whole thing was kind of funny because like they give him his father refuses for him to have a gun. Then the very next scene, or like the 2 scenes later on, they're hunting, and so they don't let him have a gun. Anyway, it's just funny how they don't let him have a gun, but he goes hunting with him a lot.